All right, let's take a look at section 3. Here's the focus question. Although slavery's disruption of the political system was an immediate cause of the Republican Party's creation, the party also reflected basic economic and social changes in American society, namely the market revolution's completion and the beginning of mass immigration from Europe. The American economy grew rapidly in the late 1840s and early 1850s. The expansion of a national railroad network did much to hasten economic growth. By 1860, railroads, not shipping, carried most of the crops and goods in the nation. Rail helped integrate the Old Northwest and the Northeast, laying the basis for political unity in the form of the Republican Party. By 1860, the North was a complex, integrated economy, with Eastern industrialists marketing manufacturing goods to the West's commercial farmers, while these farmers produced the food urban Easterners consumed. The majority of the North's population still lived in rural areas and small towns in which the ideal of economic independence, of owning a farm or shop, was still possible. But the majority of Northern workers no longer worked in agriculture. The Industrial Revolution had produced two great areas of industrial production, one on the Atlantic coast from Boston to Baltimore, and one around the Great Lakes from Chicago and Pittsburgh to Buffalo, New York. New York itself became the nation's preeminent financial, commercial, and manufacturing center. Although the Southern economy grew and cotton's expansion made great profits for the planters, the South did not develop as diverse and dynamic economy as the North. Nativism found expression in national politics in the midst of the political system's implosion over slavery in the mid 1850s. This was through the American Party, or Know Nothing Party, a name deriving from its origins as a secret organization whose members, when asked about its existence, were supposed to reply, "I know nothing." The Know Nothings wanted to restrict political office to the native born and resist the Catholic Church's influence in politics. In 1854, they gained many seats in Massachusetts state elections, electing the governor, all the state's congressmen, and most members of the state legislature. They also won mayoral races in Philadelphia, Chicago, and San Francisco. In many places, nativist candidates were a major part of the anti-Nebraska coalition of voters opposed to the Kansas-Nebraska Act. In the North, the Know Nothings combined anti-Catholicism, anti-slavery, and a strong dose of temperance sentiment. Despite the strength of nativism in this period, relatively little was changed in public policy. All European immigrants benefited from their whiteness compared to free blacks in the North, who faced worsening discrimination and job opportunities. White immigrants were allowed to become naturalized and voting citizens in only a few years, while most American-born blacks could not. By 1856, the Republican Party, a coalition of anti-slavery Democrats, Northern Whigs, Free Soilers, and Know Nothings opposed to slavery's expansion, was clearly the major alternative to the Democratic Party in the North. Republicans convinced most Northerners that the slave power, as they called the South's pro-slavery political leadership, was more dangerous to their liberties and hopes than Catholicism and immigrants. The Republican appeal rested on the idea of free labor that was at the core of a vision that celebrated the North as the basis of progress, opportunity, and freedom in America. The defining quality of the North, they argued, was the opportunity each laborer had to become a farmer or independent craftsman, thus gaining the economic independence essential to freedom. Slavery, by contrast, created a social order of degraded enslaved people, poor whites with no hope of social advancement, and slaveholding aristocrats. They saw the struggle over the West as that between two antagonistic labor systems and believed that slavery, if dominating the West, would prevent Northern free labor from emigrating and thus would diminish economic opportunity for Northerners. They insisted that slavery had to be prohibited in the territories. They further argued that the federal government could end its complicity with slavery. But they were not abolitionists, since they only wanted to stop slavery's expansion, not attack it where it already existed. Yet many party leaders viewed the nation split into incompatible free and slave societies as an irrepressible conflict that would have to be resolved. William Seward argued that the market revolution had drawn the nation closer together in a web of transportation and commerce, which heightened tension between freedom and slavery. He predicted that the United States would inevitably become either a wholly slaveholding or a wholly free labor country. Dramatic events in 1855 and 1856 fueled the Republican Party's growth. Although pro-slavery Missourians cast fraudulent ballots in Kansas elections in 1854 and 1855, President Pierce recognized the legitimacy of the resulting pro-slavery legislature and replaced the territorial governor, a Northerner. Settlers from free states soon established their own rival government and civil war erupted. Eventually, 200 people died in bleeding Kansas. The conflict seemed to discredit Douglas's policy of popular sovereignty on the slavery question. In 1856, Representative Preston Brooks of South Carolina beat Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts, who was anti-slavery, unconscious with a cane after Sumner denounced the crime against Kansas. In the 1856 election, the Republican Party nominated John C. Fremont and wrote a platform that strongly opposed slavery's further expansion. The Democrats chose James Buchanan, who had no association with any position on the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which had drawn significant Northern resistance, and endorsed the principle of popular sovereignty. Fremont won more votes than Buchanan in the North, but Buchanan won all the southern states in Illinois, Indiana, and Pennsylvania, ensuring victory over Fremont. The 1856 election showed that parties had reorganized along sectional lines. The Whigs had disappeared, the Democrats were seriously weakened, and a new party had arrived that was devoted completely to Northern interests. So that was our third question. Section. We'll come back with the fourth one next.